Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we are going to take a look at Venus's very long square to Jupiter. First, Venus will be making that square through her retrograde and then eventually stationing, moving direct again, and squaring Jupiter once more through direct motion. This means that Venus's square to Jupiter is going to last all the way into late September. And so we're going to take a look at that square today. In terms of 10 different questions that this Venus-Jupiter square may ask us. I like to sometimes think of planetary combinations as posing questions. What do you think about this? What do you want to do about that? So we're going to look at 10 Venus-Jupiter questions that may come up for you in a really strong way over the next month. First, I'll outline the transit, and then we'll go through these questions and talk about them and why they are reflective of the Venus-Jupiter combination. So that's our goal for today. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you're new to the channel. It really helps us grow. You can share your comments. That goes a long way to helping the channel pick up steam as well. We really appreciate that, especially because we also like to aggregate your stories. If you ever have a story you'd like to share, use the hashtag grabbed and then tell us the transit if it's Venus Jupiter, and then tell us your story. If you want, you can email us the story. grabbed@nightlightastrology.com is the email address. You can find a transcript of today's talk, like any of my daily talks, on the website as well. When you go over to nightlightastrology.com, I also will remind you that today is the final day of our flash sale. So let me take you over there right now and show you how this works. So today is the last day that you can capitalize on the sale that we are having. If you go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on flash sale, and you will see that all of my courses are at a discounted rate for just this week. Today is the last day as well. So I've already talked about the classes at length over the course of the past week. If you are checking them out and you have any questions, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. Okay, so let's take a look at this long Venus-Jupiter square, which perfects through the retrograde this week, and will then come back around through direct motion again. So here we have Venus retrograde in Leo, going through the square to Jupiter in Taurus, which is Venus's sign. So this is a nice square insofar as there's reception between Jupiter and Venus. Now let's watch how this plays out one day at a time. So the actual square is perfecting today, Monday, August 21st through Tuesday, August 22nd. And then the transit will stay within that 3-degree range for quite some time as Venus stations about 3 degrees away from Jupiter at 12 degrees of Leo by early September. Jupiter is also stationing and then turning retrograde. And so let's take a look here as the transit continues in September. This is right around Venus turning direct in early September, and then moving back through the square to Jupiter, who is now applying backward toward Venus. And that square is going to perfect right around September 16th. And then if we give it 3 more degrees of separation between the two planets, here we go once more. You can see that Venus is in that 3-degree range all the way up until late September. This is right around the 22nd, 23rd of September. So that gives us a nice long period of time from around the 21st of August through the 21st of September. That's a solid month of Venus being in a prolonged square to Jupiter by degree within that 3-degree range. And so one of the ways that we can talk about this lengthy Venus-Jupiter square is we can look at archetypal combinations, which we've already done once with Venus-Jupiter. If you go back, I think it was last week or the week before, we took a look at this. But I'm going to bring this into a slightly different format today. We're going to imagine that Venus-Jupiter as a planetary pairing is bringing a series of philosophical, moral, or spiritual questions or dilemmas to us. And the benefit of this transit is that ultimately, this combination of Venus and Jupiter, they're the two benefics. It's a very fruitful and what do I want to call it? I want to call this transit supportive overall. You've got 2 benefics with reception, Venus being reborn as the morning star. This feels like a significant time of positive momentum. However, this combination is not without its own unique series of like problems that we have to work through, or questions that we have to ask ourselves: moral, spiritual, aesthetic. So here are the 10 questions that I believe Venus and Jupiter, you may find that Venus and Jupiter is asking you, or asking all of us. Number one is, how much is too much? Venus-Jupiter combinations are in some ways about finding the golden mean, the middle path. Temperance is a great Venus-Jupiter. A positive Venus-Jupiter signification would be temperance, as in perfectly temperate weather. I think that's the word. The kind of weather that makes you feel like it's not too hot, it's not too cold. Just recently here in Minnesota, I want to say it was like 80 degrees, 79 degrees with a nice breeze. It wasn't humid. The sun was out, but it wasn't too hot. And I just like, oh my God, this is just like the perfect day. And I thought, isn't it interesting? This was just recently that Venus on that, Venus was moving into her cazimi. This is like such a beautiful day. And I was just appreciating what a nice Venusian signature it was. So that sort of quality of Venus Jupiter, of it being just right. It's like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, just right. Venus Jupiter can be about helping us differentiate between what is too much, too expensive, or too big, or too bold, or too busty. You can never be too busty. Let's get real. Or what is like what's moderate, or what hits the right, the right volume, or what hits the right amount. So finding that's a question over the next month. How much is too much? Whether that's food or portions or macros in your diet, something like that. Or if it's something about how much purple is too much in an office. Never too much. There could always be more purple. So that question could come up. How much is too much? What is just right? A great Venus-Jupiter question to be working with over the course of an entire month. Then the second question is this moral? Did you know that in the ancient Hellenistic world of astrology, that Venus-Jupiter combinations were sometimes described as temptations that will take us away from our morals or our values, especially when Venus was in a superior position to Jupiter, which is not the case right now. But sometimes it was as though Venus would be looked at as the desire to eat too much, or spend too much, or have too much sex, or follow your desires or your carnal lust into some kind of, choices, making choices or leading you into outcomes that take you away from your spiritual or moral compass, which is represented by Jupiter. Pretty hypocritical in a sense that it be blamed on Venus, considering that Jupiter Zeus was quite the philanderer. I think if you look at it either way, whether you look at it from the standpoint of Jupiter's excessiveness and Venus's temperance, or Venus's desires and Jupiter's morality, either way, in either direction, these two planets can bring up the split between that which is sensual and rooted in pleasure, and that which is, moral and rooted in the control, like the desire to control or regulate our desires so that they don't become excessive. So it's very similar to the question of how much is too much, but it's more about the relationship between desire and morality. And that's a Venus-Jupiter signification. And so there's this question, like, is what I'm doing moral? Well, it sure is enjoyable, or it sure is tasty, but is it somehow guiding me, in the wrong direction? So questions about values and moral compasses and our desire bodies are all, they could all be sort of mingling together in the next month. Hope that makes sense. Not to charge Venus with anything. This is, I think, either planet can pull in, you can really look at either planet inflecting itself on the other and bringing up this kind of dilemma. Question number 3 is this enjoyable? I mean, Venus-Jupiter just brings up a very basic question about whether or not you're enjoying something. Are you taking, delight in something? Does the food that you're making for dinner taste good? Is your work enjoyable? Is your relationship enjoyable? Venus Jupiter sets there's a standard that Venus Jupiter demands. This better be pleasant. This better be enjoyable. And sometimes Venus Jupiter comes around and it amplifies the need for joy or pleasure so much that it will also make you aware of the things that are, a killjoy or a drag, or things that you really maybe don't want to have around any longer because they're sucking your soul rather than creating an enjoyable atmosphere. So evaluating whether or not something in your life is bringing you happiness, joy, or pleasure. It's a big Venus-Jupiter consideration. But on the other hand, let's say that you don't have anything in your life to evaluate, right? In other words, it's not, number 3 is sort of like looking at something in your life and asking whether or not it sort of meets a standard or criteria. Is it bringing happiness? But on the other hand, it could also be a transit that is about getting clear as to what does bring joy or happiness, and maybe it's discovering new things that do. For example, Venus-Jupiter transits are pretty common when someone suddenly develops a hobby or an interest, like painting, that suddenly brings them a lot of happiness, or they suddenly decide that they're going to take dance lessons or learn a musical instrument, or maybe someone suddenly realizes that they actually enjoy physical intimacy way more than they ever thought they could or would or should, or something like that. So evaluating things in your life that already exist and saying, is this enjoyable? But on the other hand, learning about new things that bring pleasure or joy. So it's a sort of a subtle distinction between number 3 and 4. Number 5 is also similar, but a little different. What brings vitality? Venus-Jupiter is also, just as much as it can represent a beautiful sunny day, like it's sort of perfectly fertile, creative weather. The plants are growing. Nothing's suffering with too much heat or wetness or dryness or hotness. It's just perfectly temperate weather. Well, that weather, there's a sense of well-being. It's like everything's vital and healthy and alive. Venus, Jupiter, both planets were associated with what brings life when people are ill, or what heals or brings vitality back when the body is drained or diseased. Of course, there were diseases associated with both planets as well, but generally speaking, in astrology, Venus and Jupiter bring health and wellness back to things that are sick. So the question of what actually makes me feel healthy bodily, the food, the amount of sleep, the right people or company, this could bleed into some of the other things we've asked with the first 4 questions, but this question has more to do with what amplifies or brings about a greater sense of physical, like embodied health and well-being, vitality. This is a good question to ask as Venus and Jupiter get together for a whole month. Number 6, what does wealth look or feel like? Now, for some people, that's a number of literal dollars, or whatever your currency is. For other people, that's something that you have or are in possession of. It could be a material object. For other people, that's being debt-free. That's actually how wealth is defined, is I don't have a lot, but I'm not in debt. People define wealth differently. In fact, one of the things I was looking at, and I should have kept it up, but let me show you this. So the etymology of the word wealth is really interesting. So wealth is also etymologically related to the same idea as health. That wealthy is like a synonym in ancient languages, and I'm trying to look which one was it. Norse, maybe. Oh God, this is a long entry. So, but it was the basic idea of wealth was that it was closely related to health. And so when you think about what defines wealth, for some people, and I'm not criticizing this at all. I'm not trying to lay any charges of materialism, because it's a very real thing in our world, as everyone knows, that if you don't have money, you're going to be sick. A lot of people are going to be sick. But wealth for some people might be not having an extreme amount of money, but having a normal amount of money, but also having education as to how to take care of yourself, which a lot of people also don't have. So how do we define wealth? And I think it's really complicated, because for some people it's education. For some people, wealth is your relationships or your family. For some people, it's a soul quality. Like, I feel the wealth of my soul. I feel happy and alive. And that has to do with, more intangible things. Some people describe, some people are going to define wealth spiritually, some materially, some, and I think if we're honest, most of us are going to describe it as a combination of material and spiritual or emotional and psychological factors, all together. But it's an interesting period. For an entire month, Venus and Jupiter, a planetary square known for wealth and abundance, is in the air. How could it not bring up the question, what does wealth look or feel like to you? I've thought about this because for me, over when I started for the first, I'd say 8-9 years of my astrology practice, I did not make very much money at all. My business has gotten a lot more successful in the past 4 or 5 years. And I hired a financial advisor because I didn't know what to do when I started earning a little bit more money. I was like, I don't know what to do with this, And one of the first things that this person said to me, which I was so thankful for, and I went to someone who is, I would consider someone who is a financial advisor who has a deep spiritual orientation. And the first they said, you have to get really clear as to, what your values are, because, really, like, managing your assets comes down to what are the values that define what brings you happiness, and how do you want to do what you can with what you have to create a lifestyle that, provides sincere joy and happiness to whatever extent you can be joyful or happy with the use of money, which is not everything. And I really didn't know. I was like, gosh, it's so at any rate, that's in many ways, that's a, whatever, what do they call them? Like what they call first world problems, this is it's a privileged problem. But I think for each of us, the question of what actually makes me feel like there's a sense of overflowing, abundant health and wealth to my life, that's a question that a lot of us, we don't ever answer because we're in the thick of trauma. We're in the thick of survival. We're in the thick of experiencing oppression or hostility or broken relationships. And I think once in a while, a transit like Venus-Jupiter comes along and it just says, look, take a minute and invite more health, wealth, vitality, abundance into your life. And I'm not someone who likes the, I don't not believe in manifestation. Okay. But I'm not someone who's like, go read The Secret and, manifest a bunch of stuff. I don't get, that's not my thing really. No offense to anyone who's, into that. But there is something about just taking some time to say, what does health, wealth, vitality, fullness, richness, what does that feel like to me in my body? Not as a dream of, I don't know, hitting the jackpot and winning the lottery and having endless financial resources, but like spiritually, emotionally, what does that look like? I don't think our life is meant to be about, perfecting something. But sometimes it can really clarify what we're doing in our priorities and how we spend our time, our money, our energy, our resources, to just sit down and say, what does health, wealth, and happiness look like to me? So I think that's one of the best questions of this transit, is that we can get a little bit clearer about that. And even if it's just doing a few things differently, like here's one that happened to me very recently. This was under Venus-Jupiter square back in June of 2023, when they first came through the square while Venus was in direct motion. And I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it for later. And I've talked about it all summer with friends and stuff like that. When Venus was square to Jupiter, suddenly I realized that one thing that gave me a lot of well-being was to stop throughout my day, here or there, whenever I was starting to feel a little sluggish, and to just sit down on my couch here or with Ashley, and just take 15 minutes to just breathe and take a break. And it's crazy, but to me, that is one of the things that suddenly fills my cup back up and makes me feel like there's an overflowing, like a fountain of well-being, of abundance. And I would describe that feeling in part as a kind of spiritual wealth, that I'm not tapped out and sort of dry and there's nothing in me anymore. Simple, like just take a few breaks during the day. Anyway, number 7, what are my standards? I think this has to do with, I would call them almost like standards of beauty. Standards, by standards, I mean something closely related to our taste. What is my taste? What are my standards? But standards of beauty, standards of sensual gratification. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to watch a TV show that I don't find to be beautiful or intelligent. I'm not going to listen to music that doesn't lift my spirit or make me laugh. It's almost like getting clear. And this is similar to like, what does wealth look and feel like? It's sort of like getting clear about what I need from different kinds of experiences so that they make me feel good. Number 8, where is a lack of beauty draining me? On the other hand, is there a room in your house where you're in it and all of a sudden you feel a little drained? Is there something you could do to change that room? Paint the walls, throw up some different artwork, put in some interesting adornments, burn some incense, have some scented candles, or some, we like beeswax candles around here. That's one of our favorites. Is there something you could do to make sure that there are spaces, physical spaces, that don't drain you? Venus Jupiter is one of the best transits for just looking and saying, like, this is draining me because it's ugly. If you have to work in an office where there are no plants, there's no light, there's fluorescent lights above your head, you're in a cubicle. I'm pretty sure at this point, there's probably studies that have been done where it could be like, empirically demonstrated that people in these environments, their health suffers. And that is directly related to a lack of beauty, right? So something else that we could be aware of is that Venus, Jupiter can amplify beauty or the need for it in places that are lacking it. Number 9, is this an advantageous relationship? Now, this could get really political and sort of opportunistic and gross. Like, is this person going to make me money? Or is this person, you know what I mean? Like, and I think the way that I would put it is just that there's something about this transit that is about who are my allies, who are my friends, who are my benefactors, who are the people that are going to help me get where I want to go. And then there's something a little slimy about Venus and Jupiter where it's like, ooh, will this person help me get something for myself? And there's sometimes a fine line between the two. Sometimes people are really going to help us get somewhere we want to go. And there may be some compromise. I don't totally love this person or this company or something, but there's a compromise here in terms of it being advantageous in some, in the bigger picture. And I think that, life is like that sometimes. How many of us have had to work jobs we didn't love, but it gave us experience on our resume, On the other hand, this is like, will this friend get me into that popular group? It's interesting to me that this summer, as we've had this testimony between Venus and Venus retrograde and Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, that the movie Barbie came out. Kind of the question about like, what's plastic and what's real? And that's a Venus-Jupiter distinction that can come up as well. This is why the transit can be associated with people who have plastic surgeries, but at the same time can be associated with people who are like, there's nothing, I don't have any judgments against plastic surgery, by the way, but why are we doing it? It's like, and is it artful? Is it like too much? Like, I've had clients all sorts over the years, and it's like sometimes you can tell that someone has gone too far and they don't look like themselves, And I never judge people, but like it's hard not to see when someone has attempted to beautify, but like maybe there's been too much filler in their lips or something. Do you know what I mean? It's a Venus Jupiter dynamic. And the question about what enhances and makes something more valuable or attractive and what that can get us or do for us is part of Venus Jupiter. In the same way that, like, as Venus squared Jupiter, I began the process of redoing all of the photography for my website. So it's like, how can I make things look a little nicer or better, or update the photography or something, like the aesthetic, make it look nicer. And then there's something where it's almost like it goes too far and it feels unnatural. It's a sort of Barbie real versus fake thing that can come up. And the same thing can be true in terms of taking advantage of people socially or feeling taken advantage of versus real opportunities for growth. Maybe they're not totally perfect and there's some compromise, but there's a big difference between that and like fakery. And then finally, number 10 is, what do I need to feel loved or liked? Big question. How much attention do I need? How much do I need people to love me, adore me, give me physical or emotional compliments? Do I have enough attention in my life, enough adoration? Venus Jupiter is about adoring things, loving things, appreciating things, being attracted to things. Well, we all need to feel loved. We all need to feel attracted on some level. I think it's very human anyway. We all need to feel liked. When does it go too far? When do we measure our life by likes and shares and algorithm, versus what's a normal, healthy need for attention and to feel attractive? These questions could come up for us as well. It's good to get clear. If you need to tell a partner, hey, look, this is what I need to feel loved. If your partner really loves you, they'll need that feedback and they'll appreciate it. It may not be easy to take right away. Sometimes we take it personally. You're saying there's something wrong with me. I don't love you well. Oh, well, no, it's just this is what I really like. Could you do this? Sort of like, what, you don't appreciate that I'm giving you a back rub? Well, no, I really do, but could you rub this part of the shoulder? It's like, we should be offended by that, hopefully. But it's hard. So sometimes a Venus Jupiter transit comes along and it just says, this is the way I need to be loved. Could you do me this favor and love me in this particular way? And it's good to get clear about those things. It's also important that if we're going to ask for it, we better be ready to also ask other people what they like and need. How do you need to feel loved or liked? So, all right. Well, those are my 10. And I think that these questions will be coming up in the next month. So yeah, I can't wait to hear what you guys think and what you guys end up experiencing. I will look forward to your reflections in the comments section. And that's it for today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.